Thank you for watching the Housing Oregon YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe.
So I want to welcome you to Housing Oregon's Member Forum. Our topic today is on addressing the urgent challenges in affordable housing finance. And my name is Brian Hoop. I'm Executive Director with Housing Oregon. I want to thank BORA Architects for hosting us. One of their staff will join us in just a moment. And for those who don't know, Housing Oregon, we're the statewide association of nonprofit organizations and ally organizations from across the state, dedicated with a mission towards lifting up and advocating for the nonprofit affordable housing sector, representing organizations on the continuum from homeless service organizations to multifamily rental organizations to homeownership organizations. And I want to thank the board of directors that have been helping lead our organization. And if there are any board members who are here with us, if you could just raise your hands, give them a round of applause. And I want to thank our staff who have joined us here, our mighty team of 4. Christina Palacios, do you want to stand up? And Jennifer Bugley. And online, Kevin Cronin is online helping moderate the online conversation from Eugene. And I wanted to ask Brian Squillace to join us from BORA Architects, just to say hello.
A couple words. Okay. Welcome, everyone. I get to deliver the really important things. The bathrooms are right there. If you want to stick around afterwards, we've got a little deck. You can join us. You can schmooze. I'm just super excited to have so many friendly faces, new and old, joining us. So thank you. Make yourselves comfortable and enjoy the panel.
And I also just wanted to say why we're doing this. I know that Travis Phillips, who I don't think is here, has organized get-together networking, happy hours for the developer scene in Portland, and those have been really popular. And I've heard from a growing number of members, we need to have more of these, not just for the developer community. So that kind of nudged me along. But the other reason that we're here tonight as well is that we're in the middle of a legislative, or nearing the end of a legislative session, and that's the purpose of our topic. And I wanted to invite Rachael Duke, our board chair, to just briefly say why that's important and to introduce the panel.
Thank you. This is such a great space. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. And it's really nice to see all you fabulous people here. I'm really excited for this panel because it is true. There's a lot of challenges facing our industry right now. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how we steward the precious resources that we have built over time, how we think about moving forward. I'm excited to say there'll be a call to action at the end so we can think about how we can actually do things. We're already doing things, but how do we respond to some of the particular messages that we're hearing, that we'll be hearing about today. So I am Rachael Duke. I work at as Executive Director at Community Partners for Affordable Housing, but I'm here because, actually just because I'm chair of Housing Oregon, and since I volunteer my time doing that, I get to have these exciting moments of introducing things at events. Woohoo! Also, there's a nail in my tire right now, so you may see me out in the parking lot for quite a while after the session. I want to introduce our panel. Kathy Swift, a fabulous banker with Heritage Bank. Thank you. Traci Manning, here from Housing Development Center, and I remember when she worked at Central City Concern like 4 decades ago, I think.
Portland Housing Hero.
Yeah, and then all the other really great jobs you've had since then. And Bill Van Vliet from NOAA. Thank you, Bill. Nice to see you again. And I guess I'm just going to pass this microphone on to you guys so you can get started.
Okay, I think I drew the short straw, and I'm going to go first here. I'm going to go through some data that got some of this conversation going collectively as an industry. And this came about after sort of NOAA watching for about the last 3 years, performance of projects steadily tapering down. And in conversations with our colleagues out and around the industry, a lot of people were having struggles with projects. We know this, but we didn't have any aggregated data to really demonstrate it, so we didn't have much to support ourselves in going to ask for some support from the legislature and from other jurisdictions. So we went about it, NOAA, and did a operating analysis over a period of 5 years. So we started in 2018, and we did annual reviews of every project in our portfolio, and then took averages in how those projects were performing. And so we did that. It became clear that yes, we had a problem, and when you looked at the numbers and the graphs, it was a significant problem that we needed to take action on, or there were going to be some serious consequences. So conversations with colleagues again, and we started putting plans together to inform people and then make decisions about how we might recommend some changes. So if I can make the technology work, which I am at about 50-50 at, let me do a short summary of some slides. I have a bigger deck, but I'm not going to bore you all with that. So just this portfolio operating analysis, just so you know what the data set is, we have about 112 projects, 5,200 units from around the full state, average units per project, about 50 in our portfolio here. About half of all of this is in the Portland metro region, so you know that. I'll say too that we haven't done very many projects that are coming out of the Portland or the metro housing bonds. So we haven't, the really big transactions, the more recent transactions are not part of this data set. So just know that's what that is. We tend to do slightly smaller loans than those. So just a couple of quick graphs here. There's a bunch of lines here. Don't worry about that. It's just noise. If I had had time, I'd have gone through and made one single line. We break our portfolio into different regions around the state for purposes that nobody needs to know about and care about. But what you'll see is these are by different regions, and the orange one is Portland Metro. There's a theme with Portland Metro projects, but almost all of them are showing drop-offs in economic occupancy over the last couple of years. And again, these are averages, not every project. A lot of projects are doing fine. A lot of projects are not doing fine. So, but this is indicative of one issue facing the industry. This is the other issue. We have a drop-off of revenues, and then we have an increase, steady increase in operating expenses. You guys all know this. These are your projects, but to see it aggregated this way has been pretty impactful. And you can see that, again, the Portland metro area costs, the operating environment here is much more expensive. And so you see these dollar per unit costs for the Portland area being higher than what's happening in other parts of the state. But there's projects struggling in all parts of the state. We need to be clear about that. So this is probably pretty busy, and hopefully these can maybe get distributed so you can look at them. But we did this analysis line by line in an operating statement. What I've done is condense these down to the 5 categories of expenses that were the ones that were driving challenges. The other categories all had almost zero effect. So what we know, and you all know, insurance is a big problem. So what this chart shows is on the left column, well, the left half is our statewide average. The right half is broken out just the Portland Metro average. And these are dollars per unit per year. The left columns are 2018 actual. This is the numbers that we started with in 2018. The far right columns of each of those groupings are 2023 actuals, and you can see that. Then, because I was curious, I'm a nerd, I went through and took 2018 and I trended those, how we would normally trend a project if we were underwriting it today at 2% and 3%. There's one thing we need to talk about. And the numbers in yellow down the right side is the dollar above where they should have been had those trended numbers held, right? So you can see insurance for the statewide projects are $253 per unit per year higher than what we would have expected it to be at this point. On-site management was another category, very consistently above. Repairs and maintenance was the biggest challenge across the board for both groupings. A couple of surprises for me, maybe not for you, for me. Water and sewer, big problem. Almost every region of the state. And those costs went up disproportionately than what we would have expected. And when you look at big aggregate numbers like this, that's not a leak in a few projects. This is rate change. And I don't think it's consumption change, or you wouldn't see this kind of consistency. Same with trash. Same thing. Trash was one of the biggest per dollar per unit per year increases. And so there's another category. And again, you guys will have to figure out why. I think some of it is tipping fees and some of it is probably usage. And so that's another category, though, that is worth drilling down on.
Hey, Bill, is security in one of those line items?
Security, I believe in ours, and that's a good question, is lumped in with repairs and maintenance. Don't ask me why, but that's where we ended up putting it because it's not. So we're going to start breaking that out.
That's what we've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, security is a big one, especially in the Portland metro region, less so around the state. But you can see that the actual operating cost per unit statewide should have been $6,500. It was $7,700. And for the Portland metro area, it should have been $7,500, was almost $9,000. Then I graphed out debt coverage ratios. This is just the Portland metro region. But I took 2018 actual, and the yellow line is what the trended numbers should have been. 2% and 3% increases, that's what those 2018 results should have shown. Then I laid down the actuals for that 5-year period, and you can see where we are. And it's not a pretty picture. We are below break even in our portfolio, break even, not just out of compliance. This is below break even for debt coverage ratios on these projects on average in the Portland metro region. And you can also see, then I trended it. Okay, we'll go back to 2 and 3 because that's the best we have at the moment. You know, obviously when you're underwater, it just gets worse. So this calls for a change and it calls for corrections. And there's the debt coverage ratio graphs. Oops, I will let Traci talk about that in a minute. So we're in a new operating environment and we're not going back. You know, inflation happened, COVID happened, a lot of things have changed the landscape permanently. And that's the message that we've been taking out as we've been talking to people is this is a nationwide issue. And the only way to fix it is to have interventions for projects that are struggling. And so we pull a group of people together to talk about that and to come up with a list of proposals. We've presented this with the governor's office and key legislators who asked us to pull a group together to come up and come back to them with recommendations, which we have done. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. And that's pretty much about where we're at. So I think I'll leave it there. And well, just one more thing on the recommendations. We were asked to break these into 2 buckets. Short-term solutions, longer-term solutions. So we focused, because we're in the middle of a legislative session and we got a late start, on just the short-term solutions to have fast and rapid impact on these portfolios. Because the risk is, if we don't fix these projects, which fixes portfolios, we're gonna have a hard time getting projects developed because capital's drying up. And that's the risk, is the governor wants production, yet there's gonna be a lot of folks that can't get financing based on what's happening in these portfolios due to this operating shift in the environment. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Bill. So Bill, so this is an extremely capable group of people, and I think, part of our message to legislators is we need some more tools. We know what to do, right? We've been in this industry for a long time. This is not just an affordable housing problem. It is not just a Portland problem. It is national, and it is absolutely the same in the market industry. And you can find plenty of reports online that say all the same things, all the same categories, all the same issues. And so this working group is focused on short-term issues. It's a great group of folks, and any one of you could be on it, and several of you are. Because it's bankers. I don't usually speak with this many bankers, but so it's the banks and the nonprofit housing owners, sponsored developers, asset managers. Several asset managers are in the group, and then our collective policy and advocacy folks that know how to take our ideas and move them through the legislature. And so there's things that we know we are asking for around asset management training, some property management, capacity building, both in culturally specific and other. And those are the things around the edges where we could use some support. But nobody thinks we're going to asset manage our way out of this problem. And so ultimately, you all are making all the moves you can and trying to work with your property managers. But ultimately, if the costs are more than we're going to collect in revenue, then we're going to have to do something about the debt. And so that's what we're focused on in the short term meaning this legislative session is, so our smart folks who know the legislature said, we'll stay within the governor's requested budget. And so what we've asked, the governor asked for $185 million in preservation dollars. We've asked that 100 of what she asked for in new construction also be put in preservation. So, what we're going to need to do for a lot of these properties is recapitalize, refinance. There's also a bill that would make OHTCs available without pass-through. So, so either less debt or cheaper debt is sort of what we're thinking initially. And so that's what the ask currently is. We'll know by the end of June how we did. And then I think the other task at the legislature is really demonstrating we cannot, Bill has shown these slides to several legislators, but we can't show it to all of them. And so part of proving our point in this is thank you for those who participated. We needed to be able to explain in the visceral terms that you all know how serious this is and how urgent this is. And so thank you for those who answered the call. We did anonymize your portfolios, but to talk about, so this list here, so projects at risk of loss. And so that means these projects might be foreclosed on. And foreclosure eliminates restriction. So, for a governor who is really focused on the affordability of housing in our state, and our legislators are too, that's a big deal. That's 2,121 units. And, we're focusing on the projects and we're focusing on the tenants, and that's what legislators are focused on and should care about. But we all know that that's also devastating organizations that are community-based organizations that are there to help their community. And then we've got another almost 5,000 units that are draining cash. Maybe they're not going to get foreclosed on just yet, but they're seriously injuring organizations. And so that's where I get a little bit passionate, is I feel like, providers, affordable housing providers really held the bag and held things together during COVID. They dug into their reserves. They kept people housed, they dug into their reserves, their staffs went to work when other people's staffs didn't go to work, and they kept people in housing. And it was pretty flippin' crazy in those housing units because everybody was home all the time and they weren't doing that great. And so part of my message is it's not, they didn't screw up, they were holding things together. And they've drained their reserves, and we need to be there for these organizations because these organizations are the ones that are there for your constituents. So, so that's the message, and that's where we really need to focus short term. After session, we're going to need everybody to pull together, and then there's some hard conversations. Like, say we do get some money, how do we prioritize? It's probably these buildings at risk of foreclosure. How do we move the money quickly? OHCS has a preservation program, but it's not designed to move quickly. And so OHCS has also been part of some of those meetings, and they have committed to a track that could move these projects quickly as 60 days. So that's important. So some of the other things that are happening, so Metro has been talking about resources that they have from interest on the bonds that they may be able to help out bond-funded projects. PHB is standing up a project stabilization working group, which is focused on stabilizing existing affordable rental properties and coordinating interagency stabilization. So the goal is having one table. So if you've got a project that has PHB's money in it, it probably also has OHCS money in it, please, let's coordinate how we're going to do this and not have a different strategy for each. There's a lot of property for sale right now, and that's also something we're going to have to create a strategy around. They would like PHB and OHCS to have the same sort of approval criteria. So getting that coordinated. PHB has applied for $35 million in CDBG Section 108 loan authority to create a loan pool to fund preservation. They've issued waivers for cash flow payments on certain projects where the need exists, and they're going to look at doing that again in 2024. Enterprise Community Partners has created a sponsor support team that is aimed at activities that will stabilize affordable housing portfolios in regions around the U.S., including Oregon. Enterprise is working to provide support through several avenues, including advocacy and policy work, technical assistance, and coordination of resources through Enterprise and its partner-funded programs. So there's a lot going on, and one of the things that we'll really be focused on after session is getting everybody on the same page and then moving quickly in the same direction. So it's not going to make all y'all crazy to try to get access to the resources you need. And so with that.
Okay. So everybody who knows me, and that's a lot of you, know I tend to be a glass half full kind of gal. Okay, so let us take a glass half full to a situation that's really not good. There's a big hole at the bottom of that cup. So, what I want to talk about is underwriting reform. And mine is a little preachy, but I'll tell you what, whether your lender or your equity investor is actually telling you what they're doing, this is what they're doing. A lot of lenders don't like to be honest. They feel like that, like it's a, it's a magic, or it's like the Wizard of Oz with the drape, the curtain, right? Okay, so we must acknowledge that there has been a fundamental shift, and as a result of that, the sizing of perm debt on the traditional pro forma model and the logic that's in that model, it doesn't work anymore. And especially, it doesn't work in the next 2 years where we have so much uncertainty. You're not going to get a bank or a LIHTC investor to put their money in hoping that things go great. They are risk averse. So while OHCS and other grant funders would like to continue using the traditional equity, soft debt, hard debt bands within their financing stack, I don't think it's prudent to do so right now. And you probably don't either. Sponsors, lenders, and investors are going to be applying a risk-based analysis at the project, and if they're like me, at the sponsor level. The old pro forma of 2% annual revenue increase and 5% vacancy rate and 3% OpEx increases to size that perm debt at a 115 debt service coverage level with a 35 or 40-year amortization. That was what was common in the last couple years, ain't gonna be happening, okay? Now, every lender, every LIHTC investor is gonna do this differently. They're gonna have what they view as their pressure points, but at the end result, it's going to be a lower level of perm debt, and that's okay. We stretched it too far, people. We didn't pay attention to what interest rates could and would do. Okay, so with all that, each of us is doing it differently. I've been in working group. Portland Housing Bureau has been fantastic. We won't admit to it, but all the lenders have been sitting in and talking every 2 months about what we're seeing, what we're doing. And I will tell you, everybody is doing some sort of risk analysis. We are doing it different ways. Gina Leone is doing it with her debt service coverage ratio. I'm doing it with a differentiated OpEx assumption. Somebody else is doing it with amortizing the P&I on a 25-year basis, even though the actual loan is a 35 or 40-year amortization. But that's how they're sizing the debt. I say, if you're a developer, ask them, what are you sensitive to, so that you guys can, match up to that. It's getting some of the other funders to understand this, because everybody wants to, OHCS, it's once a year that they do their, QAP or whatever, and their models. So we need them to understand it's got to change now. The expectations and stress testing that go on, there's another form of stress testing that I do, and I think I know other lenders are doing it, and I can tell you who if you want to ask, but I need a glass of wine first. We are doing sponsor analysis in a way we haven't done before. So you really, what we're looking at is your whole portfolio. We're taking your REO, and we're looking at, okay, it used to be everybody had one problem child, right? That deal that was just not doing so good. But you had plenty of cash to take care of it. And you had plenty of really great cash flowing projects that weren't in LIHTC anymore and could help. Well, now they're all struggling, or many of it. I won't say they all. Many are struggling. And the cash cushion that was there and was continued and helped by COVID funding, that disappeared and stopped. That COVID funding stopped in 2023, and now we've got 2024. Nobody's looking at the 2024 numbers except your bankers. I can tell you, I look at what's in the checking account. I look at what's in your quarterly or other REO type of reports that you give to me, and I can tell you everybody's hurting, okay? It's not just you. And that's what I think everybody has been thinking. Oh, we just did something wrong or whatever. No, it's systemic. So what I think, and this was the second bullet point I was supposed to talk about, you could get me talking nerd-wise about numbers. And I will be glad to give you a copy of my template of both on a project level and on a portfolio level. Email me, I'll send it to you. It's just one way, it's not the only way. Everybody else is gonna do it differently, but a lot of people don't have the tool. So I'm happy to give the tool. And Heritage Bank said they would allow me to give you my tool. So there's that. And the second bullet point is advocacy. One of the things is we all have the responsibility to continue and actually increase our efforts right now towards telling the legislature, telling the other funders, and working together to get solutions. No savior is coming, and let me tell you, HUD isn't going to be fixing us. We can fix us to a degree, but we really need the legislature behind us. So if you haven't, boy, Housing Oregon, Brian, you guys rock. Oh my gosh. And also the other, Cameron and some of the others. I didn't know how to testify before. I am testifying like weekly, in writing and in person, and they're sick of me, but I don't care. They need to know our tenants, our people that they serve, our taxpayers need them to step up, and not step up in 2 years, not blame somebody. We all have to fix this. So we can. And it's by communicating with each other that I think we lenders figured out what the hell was going on, that it wasn't just our underwriting, it was something more systemic. And I think that through our whole preservation working group, everybody's eyes just opened. And we can get there. So now, Brian, take it for the close. Tell them what to do.
Questions first. You're up for some questions, right?
Oh,
All right.
yeah. Or ideas.
Or ideas, a few comments. So I just want to make sure everyone knows what will be, at least for in-person, we're here till 6, so another 10 minutes or so for Q&A. And then you're welcome to mingle and chat, network. And as Brian had mentioned, the other Brian had mentioned, you're welcome to wander around the office space here as well. And then we're also going to be checking in online. There's questions as well. So does anyone have a comment or a question? And say your name and what organization you're with.
Hi, my name's Gurney Kimberly. I'm with Join. I'm wondering if you guys are collecting data on county and age of the population that the building is prioritizing. And if so, is there any difference in Washington, Clackamas, and Multnomah County for underwriting and for when considering risk and the performance of the building?
We don't, I mean, we don't have that granular of data in our systems to do that analysis. I should probably say that I think Oregon Housing is building out their own ability to do this, and they have all of that information. So they'll start doing this kind of analysis that you just saw from us annually.
I'll also add Coalition of Communities of Color have done a whole lot of this kind of analysis, and as well with a cultural lens to it. And that's information that anyone can get. I think a good FOIA request out of OHCS in another couple months might be a great idea as their database is finalized. But that's 2023 data, and 2024 is where the real problems accelerated. And of course now with 2025 and all of the shenanigans at the federal level, it's becoming it's becoming an avalanche.
And I wanted to call on Kevin Cronin online. Do you want to call on any question? Are there any questions online yet? And hopefully he can magically speak. Is that true?
We don't have any questions online yet.
I just want Kevin to take a bow. He's the rock star who's really worked closely with Bill and Traci and Kathy on our legislative work this year. Thanks, Kevin. All right, other questions or comments from folks in person? Kimberly.
Thank you. Kimberly Horner, the Executive Director for PCRI. We are the largest Black-led affordable housing nonprofits in Portland and maybe even Oregon, if not even maybe the United States. My question is because we are a culturally specific organization, our needs are way different and greater and more complex. Is any of that taken into consideration with the data? And are there any people, communities of color that are participating in your group that's helping strategize on these issues?
So to the second question, yes, Meg has been a part of that and brings a couple different lenses that's very important to the work group. So yes, on that. As far as the data, we don't have that in the data set that we did. I mean, we just went through with the basic data that we had on operating performance and didn't break it out differently than that.
Okay. I think it needs to be looked at a little bit differently in that regard, and including maybe even preference policy. That is a very unique thing to developers in Northeast Portland that are working with the Portland Housing Bureau. It's really different.
Yeah. Sorry if I'm talking out of school, but I got opinions. So, full disclosure, I'm a former board member of PCRI and still on the finance committee. There were 8 projects done on with the early preference policy. Most of them were started 2019, 2020, before COVID. And there was a process put in place and a certain structure of the units that I think time has not been kind to. And we do need something specific to particularly those 8 projects to help support them, because the debt isn't right-sized to what it needs to be to have a sustainable project. On the new projects going into the preference policy, I know PHB is doing modeling and is working hard, and we have to help them to understand how much different it needs to be on the go-forward projects. But there is recognition there. I don't know, what would you say? Kimberly, you actually are very close to this issue.
Yeah, I believe that they recognize that there is an issue with the way the preference policy, the implementation of it. So we all support the preference policy in its original intention. It is the implementation of it, and many of the organizations that were the early pioneers with the preference policy are deeply suffering for a variety of reasons, mostly surrounding the wait list. But hearing that there is some consideration by PHB to take suggestions from some very smart executive directors, including people like Margaret Salzar and Sarah Stevenson and some other folks, we're making some progress that way, and thank you for lending a voice to it.
I think one thing I just wanted to add on, that preference policy is a good example of some of the different types of policies and how they are implemented that we really want to take into consideration as we talk about sort of the longer term solutions out there. There's a lot of there's a lot of good intention that has really harmed providers in the industry in the way it's been implemented. And we need to start correcting some of that. You know, we rely on a lot of third parties to get tenants into buildings these days. Those processes aren't smooth. They need to be smooth. And so we need to have conversations around that, and we need to be having those with the people who make the policy decisions at the legislative level or at the local jurisdiction level, but then also with between the organizations that are implementing them.
All right, I have another question here or comment from Rachel. And then for folks online, if you do have a question, put them in the chat and Kevin will call upon you.
I just want to mention that a lot of housing providers are really focused now on housing folks who are super vulnerable. And there's been a lot of direction from the state and the communities that we serve that this is a priority. And I think it is a priority. But it is now it creates another opportunity, I think, for an intersection where things can really be struggling. It's somewhat maybe represented in the maintenance repair line item that you showed, Bill, but also it's a place where we're kind of brushing up against failures in other systems. And that is, and the solution to that isn't something we have any really control over in terms of how we build or how we finance. It's this kind of other situation where we really need other systems to deliver those services they're supposed to deliver so that our residents can be stable and not make it harder on our communities and on our housing. And I don't know if that is something that came up in your conversations, but I do think it's really important.
It did. And, well, you could go ahead if you want.
Well, yeah, I think, I mean, PSH, but maybe also PSH is a shorthand for the vulnerable populations you're talking about, has definitely come up as a, additional layer. Both, as Bill was talking about, just an additional layer that makes leasing more difficult, but then on top of that, the expense burden and just, the number of things we're asking our housers to do. And so, yes. And also, being realistic about the lending investing environment that we're up against right now. And, how many investors are going to do PSH anymore? Or what kind of balance sheet do you have to have if you want to do PSH? So, I mean, I think, the $9,000 per unit per year that Bill was talking about, those weren't necessarily PSH projects. Those were just an average NOAA loan. So.
Yes, and I think that there's dial turning and best practices and the whole asset management side of things that we can do and incorporate to show good faith. But I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys, I know you know this, and all. We have to get the city, well, everybody, working on the same page for avoiding homelessness, to the prevention side of things. Because just a rent payment or just food or just another set of services and helping already traumatized tenants to access those in a coordinated way. That's what I've seen of the, because I see everybody, right? and some of the most effective affordable housers are the ones who are creating, and Rachael, your organization, and Mary at Sabin, and you guys are exceptional at making sure that you use whatever the resources are and create community such that you don't have to have a high-priced nonprofit coming in and doing all kinds of services. You're making sure that your tenants know where the food bank is. You're making sure that they know how to get onto the Oregon Health Plan. And there's so many things that are being assaulted right now at the federal level for funding. That's going to make it a challenge, but it's still something I think makes a huge difference. Because if I'm a traumatized mother and my kid needs to go to emergency care because he's got a 104 temperature, we're going to emergency care and you're not getting your rent check, you know? And then that starts a whole cascading. So we got to come up internally and in the state and with the city and the county for ways to be taking care of our people.
We should maybe just do one more or two more questions, and through the magic of getting a text message, I believe Holly online has a question, so I'm not sure if you want to unmute Holly or if Kevin's going to read your question.
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Cool. All right. This is Holly Benelli. I work at Community Development Partners, and I'm formerly Holly Vanderschaff. So I guess say that. So I'm curious about insurance premiums and the work there. And I'm wondering if included in that work is also going to be kind of investigation into insurance deductibles and just how that's thrown expenses, maintenance and repair expenses kind of out of whack at our properties. Because, you know, as we all know in this room, right, we went from 5K deductibles. I am young, but old enough to remember that, to like 50K or 100K deductibles that are not supportable for any of our properties. And so essentially we don't really have insurance, right, for the way any of these deals were underwritten. So I'd love to hear more about that, because it's killing some of my properties, I'll be honest.
Yep.
Yep.
So insurance is a really interesting one. There is legislation and who knows if it get funded now, because there was going to be a work group, and with the budget realities, that one may fall off. But to do some work around changes in the insurance industry, changes in how we handle insurance within the industry, there's going to be money to fund some studies and talk to the insurance commissioner about things that I don't understand. I think one of the important things about insurance is, as we see deductibles grow, your funders are going to start looking at things differently, right? We are going to look to have bigger reserves because we're going to see the need coming for you to make that first big chunk of payment if you have a big loss. That's going to be different, right? And so we're going to have to start factoring that stuff in. If you want a big deductible, that's great. You got to show us how you're going to be able to continue to operate your building after a big loss. And we're going to have some ideas about that too. And, you know, so this is all part of how we're going to have to change the way we look at development pro formas, and we're going to probably need to start talking sooner in some of these processes than we do. And ORCA has thrown everything into chaos really about how we work deals through a system. We don't know yet really, because we haven't had enough of them. And so talking earlier and not waiting till OHCS gives you some certain badge of accomplishment through their process is going to be vital. Otherwise you can end up with deals that are structured at a certain point with OHCS that your funders can't live with. So insurance is just a poster child issue for that of how we're going to have to handle it.
If there are no other comments or responses, I think we should probably wrap up. So we're going to have a call to action, but before that, I want to have us all give a round of applause for Kathy, Traci, and Bill. So I wanted to say thanks to Kathy for earlier reminding me to center our work on the residents that we serve. So let's keep that in mind. And I want to also acknowledge that Housing Oregon has been working very closely this legislative session with the Housing Alliance and the Housing Authorities of Oregon. We had an amazing lobby day a month ago, and the last couple weeks, as Kathy mentioned, many of you have been writing letters, testifying as well before the various Ways and Means subcommittees, And now we need to kind of shift to the broader base of the legislature, and we all need to start talking to our state senators and state representatives, where your offices are represented, where you live, where maybe your different properties are based. So we wanted to encourage everyone. A handout has been passed around, and hopefully Kevin online can post a link to this call to action. But I wanted to encourage everyone before you leave tonight, if not even now, to take out your cell phone, and there are QR codes on this sheet, and there's a QR code on top where it will help you look up who your legislator is by plugging in an address. And so I want to see everyone pull out a phone right now. And I'm going to be watching as we wrap up this dialogue. I hope before you leave here tonight, you read that QR code and either send in an email message or even give a call and just leave a quick message. There's a sample message here on this flyer, and it's really about supporting investments in affordable housing preservation and new affordable housing development through Article 11Q bonds and lottery bonds. It could be as simple as that. So you're all going to do that for me, and folks online as well, and we're going to be following up as well with more action alerts in the coming weeks.
Tell them about OLIS. That thing is so cool. Okay, so we got this OLIS software system for the state of Oregon. And let me tell you, people, this is where they get my opinion regularly. So go on to that, see and communicate with our government. It makes a difference. They actually listened to some of the stuff I said. So that was cool.
All right, and then the last comment is you can phone call your state representative or state senator. The numbers are up there, and when you look online, it's the last 4 digits is basically their district number. So, or the last 2 digits is their district number. So I will shut up now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Brian,
and
can I just make one really
closing comment?
Nerd comment here, though. What's really important is the lottery bonds. Those are the bonds we need more than anything else, because that is the color of money that will do the things we need it to do. The geo bonds are good for regular run-of-the-mill preservation. Lottery bonds are what's going to help us with stabilization projects. Including video poker?
Well, that's where it comes from.
That's why it went away during COVID.
All right, thanks, Bill. And thanks everyone here for joining us, both online and in person.